Sweet. It's been, it's been way too long since I've recorded anything. I have this habit of recording a whole bunch of shit all at once. Awesome. Ding. I have this habit of recording a whole lot of things all at once. And I upload them all at once to my YouTube channel or my podcast or my vlog or whatever. And then I don't go, then I go a while without recording anything. And then I don't record anything, and I don't upload anything to YouTube or my my SoundCloud account. And I need to get away from doing that. I am lazy. You know, I have a full-time job. I work 9 to 6. And it keeps me pretty damn busy during the week. And on the weekends, I'm just fucking tired, and I don't want to be sitting on my laptop editing video clips and editing all my audio. I would much rather be playing video games, and with it being Christmas time, I have a whole shitload of games I'm trying to finish up before I get absolutely bombarded with new games for Christmas. And I'm looking under my Christmas tree right now, looking over my shoulder, and there are literally 15 or 16 new games under that tree that I'm going to open up all on Christmas morning. I have games from 2013 that I still haven't played. 2013's Christmas. I have games from 2014 Christmas I haven't played. And I have a ton of games from last year, 2015, that I have yet to play. Namely, Assassin's Creed Syndicate and Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. And just a whole ton of other ones. So I'm in this mode where I'm just like, I got to play the shit out of all these video games. I need to finish these. So I picked a game from 2014 that I hadn't finished yet, which was Dragon Age Inquisition. And I'm trying to plow through that. And that is a long-ass game. Easily 80 to 100 hours. So probably not the best game to have picked to finish before Christmas, but whatever. I'm doing a pretty good job knocking games out. And I'm trying to get my gamer score to 100,000 by January 1st. And it looks like I'm going to fall a little short of that goal. But anyway, I had a little time today after work, and I figured I would sit down and record a vlog. I talked with my good friend last week during our podcast. We talked about differences in my life between being a junkie living on the street to having my life in control again and being in recovery. And I thought quite a bit about that in the last week since we recorded that. And man, it never ceases to amaze me how good my life is now. And one of the big differences when I was talking to him, the more I got talking to him, and the more I was going over the daily routine that I had at that point in my life, and just pretty much at any point of being completely engrossed in my addiction, is how little freedom I had to do anything. Just no freedom whatsoever. I was a slave. I was a slave to the drugs. I couldn't do anything without involving the drugs. It was like being in a really bad abusive relationship. And I've heard addicts in recovery refer to their addiction kind of like being in an abusive relationship. And it very much so is like being in an abusive relationship. And the difference between being an addict and being an addict in recovery is when you are in recovery and you don't need those drugs to function every day, you are unshackled. You have the freedom to do whatever the fuck you want. And I don't know if people who have never experienced addiction understand what that feels like. To have to answer to your drug every single day, to have to plan your day out around finding money, buying the drugs, using the drugs, and your whole day just is filled with drugs and the thought of drugs and having to use and the stress. And for me, a good portion of my addiction, I had a full-time job. I had a good, high-paying tech job that helped me afford to keep my addiction under the radar for so long. And in stealth mode, I mean, when I got out of rehab, I took that shit stealth mode, and nobody knew. And I had a normal high-paying job, and I would go to work every day, but I was still an addict, and I still had to, every morning I'd have to figure out how much money I was going to spend, and then figure out when I was going to call the Mexican to come meet me, and hope that I could do it on my lunch break, and plan out if I wasn't working up in the city that day, I had to plan out a 3-hour chunk of my day, an hour driving up there, and an hour waiting for the Mexican to show up, and then an hour to drive back home. I mean, 3 hours of your day, that's a good chunk of your day spent in the pursuit of drugs. And that's if I already had money. And if I didn't have money, I had to spend an hour stealing shit or finding a way to get money. So you tack on an 8-hour job on top of that, and your fucking day is toast. You have no free time. And to have spent just shy of a third of my life doing that, a third of my fucking life, 12 years, completely wasted, almost completely wasted doing that. And nothing to show for it except all these experiences and stories and what it has made me into today. That is really all I have to show for it. It blows my mind, but I survived it, and I came through on the other end, and here I am. I have the freedom to do whatever I want. If I wanted to pack a bag, throw it in my truck, drive down to Vegas, and throw $1,000 on the craps table, you know what? I could do that. I could absolutely do that. Send an email to my boss. Hey, I'm taking a PTO day tomorrow. I'm going to hit the craps tables. FYI, if you haven't figured it out yet, I like to gamble. Especially craps. Craps is my game. But I could do that right now if I wanted to. But if I was in the middle of my addiction, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go pack a bag. And I'm going to hop in my car. And I'm going to see, oh, I don't have any gas. Well, do I have drugs to cover the drive down there to Vegas? Well, no, I don't. Well, I got to call my dealer and I got to get enough drugs. Oh, well, that money you were going to put in for gas and to go gamble with and to stay in a hotel in Vegas, well, guess what? You kind of need that money to pay for your shit. And the drugs aren't going to allow that. The drugs don't allow you to do anything. And you answer first and foremost to your drugs. You wake up in the morning, you do your drugs. And then you plan your day around that. Everything else takes a back seat to your addiction, to the drugs. You bow down to that shit. The drugs are your master, and they dictate your every move. You are a fucking puppet on strings, and your addiction and the drugs, they make you dance like fucking Pinocchio. And that's how your day goes, and that's how you live. Yeah, you can hide it. I hid it for years. Nobody knew. I looked normal. I was a normal weight. I wasn't super ultra skinny. I would go to work every day. I would come home from work. But the drugs, they consumed my life. Oh, the new video game came out? Oh, I really, really want to play that. Sorry, you got to use your money to go buy drugs tomorrow. That $60 you were going to spend on a game, well, guess what? That's only going to cover half of the shit that you need to buy for tomorrow because your habit is so high. And after a while, you're not high anymore. You're not numb. You're using all these drugs and you don't get high anymore. And you have to use more just to be numb. And then you're just not numb anymore, and you're just a normal person with this massive monkey on your back. Your addiction, that you're a normal person with an addiction now. And life sucks, and life is not fun, and you never do anything that you enjoy. I never did anything I enjoyed. The things that brought me the most joy in life were playing video games, hanging out with friends, dating, going to movies, reading books, just normal shit that people like to do. But I couldn't read because I'd pass out because I was so high. I couldn't go buy video games because I couldn't afford it because all my money was sunk into drugs, even though I was making a ton of money. Couldn't hang out with friends because I was fucked up all the time and high, and I didn't want to bring that shit into their lives. I couldn't date because, well, okay, I did date, but they were all junkie girls. I dated all these crazy junkie girls, which this is a whole fucking other story. And, I couldn't go to movies because I had to pay for drugs, and I didn't have the time. I had to spend the time getting the drugs. So I was a slave, and I had no freedom. I had no freedom to act independently or how I wanted to. But now, clean, I don't answer to fucking anybody. I have a good job. I make good money. I want to go buy a video game right now. I can fucking go on Amazon, buy whatever game I want. I have money again. I answer to nobody. And I guess the important thing is I don't answer to drugs. I don't answer to a fucking balloon full of coke and heroin. I don't answer to that anymore. And to me, that's the biggest difference in my life. Freedom versus slavery. Independence versus being shackled to a drug, to an addiction. And it sucks. And for anybody out there who's dealing with addiction, you know what I'm talking about. It fucking sucks. And I hope you get help. I hope anybody who's dealing with any kind of addiction, you get help. Because life is so much better. Life is too short. I am fucking in my late 30s, and I have spent a third of my life in addiction, a third of my life as a slave, and not being able to do what I wanted to do. Don't fucking end up like me, where you look back and you're like, I spent a third of my life being a fucking idiot, blowing money left and right, ruining relationships. Nothing to show for it except a fucking record. A criminal record. I have a nice criminal record to show for it and some crazy stories. It's not worth it. I'm going to tell you right now, it is not worth it. There's no world where it is worth it. And if you think or you see a movie where they glorify drug use and they make it all glamorous, fucking go find a heavy object and smack yourself in the head until you realize it's not worth it. Because it isn't. You're a fucking idiot if you do think it is. Just bash your skull in right now. Yeah, it might be fun at first. But that's how it works, It's kind of fun at first, and you get super fucked up, and you get high, and you're like, oh my hell, how did I live my life without this substance that makes me feel better than I've ever felt in my entire life? And then it gets its hooks in you, and it gets them in deep. And you can't remove those hooks. Removing those hooks is just too hard and just too painful. And it's easier just to submit to your master. Just submit to the urge and to the addiction than it is to get help and become a normal person again. I get it. I did it for 12 years. And it sucks. And it sucks bad. And that's if you survive the addiction. Addiction usually leads one of two places, death or in jail. And I've seen death numerous times with the circle of junkies that I ran in. And I've seen jail. One of the lowest points in my life was sitting in a solitary medical confinement jail cell, staring at the wall, going through withdrawals. It was miserable, and it it sucked. There's no way somebody can convince me that drugs are worth it. No way. But there's always that nagging urge in the back of my head, like, oh man, I could just use once or twice, or just for this weekend, get fucked up, get high. Nobody would ever know. And sometimes I have to resist that urge. Any junkie that says they don't have that urge is delusional, or they're lying to you. And I do think about it. But then I think about how much I love having my independence and my freedom to do whatever I want. And granted, not everybody is going to, even outside of addiction, not everybody's going to have the freedom to go drop $1,000 on the craps table or go buy video games whenever they want. But just having the ability to think for yourself and act independently without something dictating your moves is totally worth it. Just not having the stress of an addiction is worth it. There's a lot of stresses in life. I get that. But why add addiction onto all the stresses that life throws at you? Anyway, it's just not worth it. There's no point to it. Yeah, you're numb for a little bit, but that numbness and that feeling of amazingness and the high, it wears off. And then you got to chase it again. And you get high and you got to chase it. And you keep fucking chasing that dragon non-stop. And it gets tiring. I'm exhausted just talking about it. Holy hell. I've been talking about this for 15 minutes and man, I am tired. It's exhausting. But life's good. Life is great. Life is too fucking short to not let it be awesome. So that, in summary, that's the big difference between being in the middle of my addiction to going through it and coming out of it. Freedom versus slavery. Don't be a slave.